What's going on, guys? Today I'm back with another hat format market watch for you guys. You guys have really been enjoying these and, you keep asking me to make more, so I'm going to try my best to keep up with these. Anyways, we all know that the meta can always affect the prices of past format cards and Time Wizard formats as a whole. And so today, for the first half of this, I want to focus on the current shift in the meta that's actually taking place. And what I mean by that is previously to Justice Hunters being released, we had been in a format with like Malice and Ryzeal and Mitsurugi and stuff like that. And now with Justice Hunters coming out, we're moving into more Canine and Draco Tail and Yummy and stuff like that. And some of the cards that were in some of those past decks that, were used in a lot of the older formats have started actually shifting in price, as well as a handful of things in the now current meta are starting to slowly rise up. So I first want to talk about a handful of the cards that are going to be affected from this, and then we'll move into some of the other just random stuff as we move on. But again, guys, I am no financial advisor. I'm not telling you to go and buy out any of these cards. I'm not telling you to go and sell your copies, but just more so to make you guys aware of it in case you do need these cards or you have extras and you're trying to get rid of them. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. Now, the first card I want to talk about is going to be QCR H.A.T, and in general, there is going to be a handful of QCRs in the video today, and so H.A.T was a card that a lot of the Ryzeal strategies were playing, as well as a lot of decks were just using this as a bridge between the Fiendsmith cards, and as we've seen with the current meta, Fiendsmith is slowly phasing out, or it's phased out quite a substantial amount, and as a result, we've actually seen QCR H.A.T starting to dip down in price, which is pretty solid. They had been in the, $20 to $22 range, and now you can get near mint first verifieds for about $15 to $16. So they've lost almost about a quarter of their value, which is kind of nice to see if you are wanting to get a nice H.A.T for your hat format decks. By the end of the page, they're about 17, but in general, we are seeing more quantities available. For a while, there had only been, I think somewhere in the 20 to 25 listings range, and now we are seeing those going up in terms of listings and the prices going down. Even if we look at this graph, we are seeing a substantial dip over time. So if you were, waiting out on getting some QCR H.A.Ts, now is a great time to pick them up. They might drop more, they might stay about here. We will just have to see as time goes on. And speaking of cards with Ryzeal, another popular, version of Ryzeal was the Heraldic Ryzeal deck. And the Leos, don't pay attention to this graph, but for a while, the first ed near mint Leos had reached upwards of $7 to $8 a copy. And now if we go down here, we can see that you can get light plays for a little over $1.50 each. Going to the second page, maybe we can find a near mint. Here we see a near mint verified for also about $1.68, so about $1.70. And, that is a substantial drop. We're looking at, you can get a playset of the Heraldic Beast Leos for the price of what one had been going for before. And while Heraldic isn't necessarily the most meta deck in hat format, I would say it's, pretty much in a solid tier 2, tier 3 category in the format. And it's definitely a very fun deck to play. It would be nice to get a upgraded version of this as it only has one printing. And, something like a super or ultra would look really nice. But the fact that they finally dipped down, if you were holding out on actually picking these up, they have dropped a substantial amount, which is always nice to see. Another card that's having a bit of a fallout in price is going to be your QCR copies of Goldsark. Now, this was a card that was played in Malice, and, for a while, if we look at this graph, they had been reaching about the $16 mark, and if we go down to the first ed near mints, we actually see them around $7-ish, so close to half the price of what they had previously gone for. By the end of the page, they're about $8, so about at that half mark, but this is another card, for a lot of different decks in hat format, specifically ruler decks and stuff that do play this, and it is a one of. So now actually just looking at that graph, it has taken a big dip, but we even see at the end it's starting to even out a little bit. So now seems like a pretty good time to make sure you have your copy if you are wanting to go with QCRs. These personally look really good. I know I'm going to try to pick up one or two more copies just for some other decks I have. So just wanted to kind of point this one out. And going along with, Malice and stuff, some of the Malice hate, we have QCR Artifact Sanctum. And again, with Malice kind of falling out of the format a little more, usually people would play like Thrust and Thrust into Sanctum and then Sanctum into stuff like the, what's it called? The artifact that stops banishing. I'm having kind of a brain fog right now. Lancia, that's the one. My bad. And so, yeah, so you would use that for Lancia in current format, but again, since Malice is falling out a little bit, we are seeing the prices of Sanctums going down. These had been close to the, $15, $16 range, and here we are seeing them at about the $8 to $9 range. I think they had got as low as, I want to say, close to $12 at one point, so they're even getting lower than that. And, Sanctum is a very iconic card in hat format. Any artifact deck is going to want to make sure to have these, and seeing that you can get them so cheap for the QCRs, even by the end of the page, they're only $9, so still pretty low compared to what they had been previously. We see a seller here with 9 of them and lots of other ones. There's 49 listings, so this just seems like one of those cards that's pretty solid right now. And again, they look really, really nice. So if you were holding out, they are cheaper in price at the moment. Now, just because some prices are going down, the new format and new meta is causing for some cards to go up in price. One of those cards is going to be Cyber Dragon Nova. This card, despite having a lot of different printings in a lot of different rarities, they are actually all up in price. This in general is just a card played specifically in Cyber Dragon Artifact, and I know a lot of people really enjoy that deck as a whole in hat format, but for modern Yu-Gi-Oh, this is seeing play in the Canine Crystron deck, and it's just one of those cards being able to, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, then slap something like a Cyber Dragon Infernity on top of it, and then you'd have an Omni negate, as well as being able to take an opponent's special summon monster. But for hat format, it's just a very good utility piece, being able to make this bring back a Cyber Dragon, as well as beef it up a little, and then when it leaves the field, being able to summon something like a Barbaroid or a Twin Cyber Dragon and just get a lot of damage in. And here we see commons, they're showing at the about $3 to $4 range. The ultras, we'll click on those in a second. The OTS commons are only 9 listings at about $5, which we see is up from the market price. We have the OTS supers that are also showing about $4, but the market price is about $5. I'm sure if we click that, it would be a different price. And then we see another version of the common for like $4, and again, above market price. Here, we're going to click on the ultra real quick just to see what these are actually at. You can see that price increase where it shows they had been only about $1 or $2, and now, just raising in price. Here we see a unverified near mint first for about $5, give or take. And if we find a first ed near mint that is verified, we see some light plays at about the $7 range. Heading on over to the second page here, we see, here we found a copy that's verified at $8. So these are definitely up in price, and if we keep scrolling down, we just see that they keep going up more and more. And obviously, with what I said, this is going to be the highest rarity we have at the moment is the Ultra. Despite there being supers and stuff, this is just one of those cards. Here, I'll actually click back a little, and we can take a look at, which one was it? Was it the OTS super I wanted to take a look at? We'll click on this one just to see the OTS super, and here these are obviously only came unlimited, but they are about $5, give or take, so even these are up in price. And another card for the new format that is going up in price, we see QCR 1-for-1. Obviously this is going to be a card for Yummy because they're level 1s. It's basically a way to get a free body on board without having to use your normal summon, despite most of the Yummies are going to be special summoning themselves, plus you have cards like Obedient Schooled and stuff. This is kind of just an extra piece for the deck, and here we see that they are at about $17. By the end of the page, they're also, about $17, $18, and there's 27 listings. There are sellers with more than one. We see these first couple have two. This is just a one of in hat format if you were to play it anyways, and a lot of times it's not the most common card, but for example, the Synchron decks or anything that's going to play Level Eater is going to want a copy of this, and it does look really good. I know I just picked up a couple of these, and I think I had got them at like $8 or $9 at the time, so we are seeing that steady increase. Even looking at this graph, they have gone up substantially. I don't know how much more these are actually going to go up, as I'm pretty sure I had seen these get bought out a little bit, maybe a few days ago even, and we now see 27 listings, so they are repopulating, so they might drop a little bit or they might stay about here, but it is just another one of those cards to be made aware of. Next up, while we did have a new set come out, and we're expecting the tins to come out eventually after Worlds, or right around the time of Worlds, we should be getting a new ban list according to Konami, and one of the cards that people have been waiting to come back is going to be MX Saber Invoker. This is a card that, again, I'm pretty sure it came off in Master Duel as well as the OCG, and it's been a little while, and we just haven't got it back here in the TCG yet, and we are seeing them start to rise up in price. I know I was picking these up for about $3 for a while, 3 to 4 give or take, and here we see 19 listings with the lowest verified being $8, and by the end of the page we're looking at about $10, so these are definitely going up. Can I see it coming back? It's about time for the TCG, I feel, in a lot of cases, because it's well past zoo format, and we are getting some new Tri-Brigade things if I remember correctly, so that could be kind of incentive to push it a little bit. And in terms of hat format, there's a handful of decks, more so some of the rogue options, kind of. For example, I'd shown off a really cool Iron Chain deck that really took advantage of this well as Madolche is a deck that's known to, in a lot of cases, play Invoker, though some builds have been cutting down on the Messengelados, meaning that they wouldn't necessarily need the Invoker, but in general, we have seen this in the past, so that is something to be sort of aware of and stuff. Speaking of kind of rogue Xyz decks, here we see that the number 64 Ronin Raccoon Sendayu only has 2 printings, its original print as well as the Megaton, and we see that the Megaton only has 13 listings. I'm not entirely sure why this is, but usually the Megatons did have just lower amounts available because the card pool was so big that the rares were sort of harder to get. And going down to the near mint first verified, we see them at, what is this, about $3 give or take, and well, actually this one would be almost 5, giving the shipping and stuff like that. But then we do have a couple light plays and stuff in the $3 range, some unverifieds and stuff like that. So overall, though, this card is worth a little bit of money. In a lot of the Raccoon decks, you are going to be playing 2 to 3 of this. So, that is going to be a little bit more. It's more than your average rare being, anywhere from like a quarter to 50 cents in a lot of cases for just random stuff like this. But if we go to the originals actually have a lot available. We see 63 listings. We even see the graph going up a bit, but the first ed near mints you can get for under $2, at least for the first little half here, and then they go up to about $2.50 give or take. So definitely not bad if you want originals. And this is another one of those cards that I can hope that one day we do get a reprint in a higher rarity, but for the time being, if you are wanting to play, like for example, Fabled Raccoon in hat format, or just Raccoon Pure or something along those lines, this is one of those cards that you are unfortunately going to need. And it never feels good to pay like a few bucks for rares, because a lot of times you just hope you get them in throw-ins, but that's the case with Yu-Gi-Oh! In more modern times. The next thing I want to talk about is something that hasn't really changed in price that much, but overall I do want to point this out as, Geargia is one of the best decks in hat format, and this was kind of something interesting that I had seen, and that is for the super rare copies of Accelerator, which are the highest rarity, we see that there's 30 listings, and if we go down to, what's available, we see light plays at about $4, and let's see if we can find some near mints. We see near mints closer to the $5 $5 range, and again, about 30 listings of these. This is a card that obviously you're going to be playing at 3 of, and similarly, if we go over to the super rare Geargia Arsenals, which are also a 3 of in the Geargia deck, and this is the highest rarity, we see that there's actually almost double the amount of listings, and for near mint, you can get them for $2. So there is a very big price discrepancy in terms of the Arsenals versus the accelerators, despite them being played at the same amount. I'm not entirely sure if it has something to do with how often these were available in terms of Astral Pack 5 versus, I believe it was Astral Pack 2 that this came out in, yeah, but you do want to keep that in mind that there is a bit of a difference in price, and there is a lot less listings for the copies of Accelerator, so that's just something kind of cool I wanted to point out. The next thing I want to point out is something that isn't very common in hat format, but you do see from time to time, and that is going to be Galaxy Serpent. This card has been played in a couple different Hieratic variants, as well as there's been a couple different Synchro variants of decks that have played this card, and the thing to point out is there are 4 different versions of this. There's 2 different commons, one being from the demo deck and one being from the linked structure deck, and then you have your original print supers, which are very cheap, and then you have your ultra rare, which was actually the, I believe, Judgment of the Light sneak peek card, if I recall correctly. And so this one has 23 listings, which you wouldn't think much of, especially given the price of all the others. But what I can say is there is one verified near mint for about $2. And after that, there's just a bunch of light plays. And if you want a near mint after that one is gone, it's going to cost you almost $5 for an ultra, which again, isn't terrible for just a random one of. Again, there's not even that many decks that play it. We see people who have them, you know, multiple available in terms of the different quantities and stuff, but this is a card that is slowly starting to creep up a little. I think this could partially just be because of the exclusivity of it being, you know, a promo card, and, you know, people like to collect these very similar to how people collect the jump promos and stuff like that, but that is something I just wanted to point out because I thought it was kind of neat as I was scrolling through actually looking for a couple copies of these for myself. Similarly, talking about dragons, we have Sacred Sword of 7 stars, which hasn't necessarily had a reprint in a while. I think the most recent one is going to be your Mago, your kind of gold lettering rare, which is going to be really cheap that we see. And then we have a couple different versions of the common that are all like 20-something cents. And here we see, though, we have 2 versions of the super. We have the Mega Pack Super, which I'll click on real quick, and we see that the light plays are about $2, and the near mints are about $2.50, almost $3, give or take, which isn't bad, but the originals actually are holding up quite a decent bit in terms of value. And again, this is one of those cards that some of the Dragon Ruler decks like to play, because if you activate this, you're able to then draw 2 and then trigger whichever ruler was actually banished. And again, it's a one of in the format, so it's not the craziest thing, but some people like it, some people don't. And going down here, if we try to find a first ed near mint, we'll see how far we actually have to scroll. We see some damaged for around $4. Here we see a couple light plays in the $4.50-ish range, but actually trying to find a near mint is going to take us a minute. Here we see, again, just more light plays, and even, again, we're on the 3rd page at the bottom, and we have not seen a first ed near mint yet, let alone verified yet. And so here we see some light plays getting a little closer. Maybe we'll see one. Okay, so by the end of the 4th page, again, still no near mints. And so let's see here. We finally found one at $6. So close to double what the Mega Pack Supers were going for. Here we see that, and, you know, there are several available at that range. But again, just if you want a one of, it's going to be $6. So maybe this is a reason that, you know, if you don't care about it being original, maybe go with the other version of the super, or if you really don't care, you can always just go with the commons. Next up, another card that, you know, people really like, the Evo deck, and I wanted to point this out that Serato only has 2 printings. And, you know, we see that the Ultra is pretty cheap, and most people, if they're going to play this deck, usually this is a 1, maybe even sometimes a 2 of, depending on how you want to go about it. And these are actually up in price pretty much a decent bit. And so let's see if we can actually find one. Yeah, we see the market price at about $5 to what was that? Did that say 10 for the most recent sales? So that might actually kind of indicate what we were getting at here. And that is, here's like moderate plays for $5. We see some unlims and stuff for the 6 range. And just going down to find here some light plays at about the $7.50 to $8 range. Again, near mints are going to cost you a little bit. And some of these older alties did have problems with chipping and stuff because the alti was so thin. So that is something to just kind of keep in mind. Here we do see one at about the $10 to $11 range. So that actually is worth a little bit of money. Again, not the craziest thing. This isn't like a meta deck in hat format, but if you were wanting to play this and wanted the alti, it actually is worth a little bit of money. Again, only having 2 printings. Another card I want to bring up that isn't really played that much in hat format, there is a handful of people that are trying to build different fire pile decks and stuff like that, and I've seen a couple people test around with this, but this might have to do simply with, the more recent Monarch support, but we actually see that the original print Thestalos are getting kind of low on listings, especially compared to the others, with only 23 available, and here, there is the other secret that's we're seeing close to $1, the Ghost from the Past Ultra, which is only worth, 20 to 50 cents, give or take, and then we have the common. But if we actually click on the originals for this, we are seeing that the price quickly goes up. We see some light plays for about $3, and then by the end of the page, before even finding a first ed near mint, we are already over the $4 range, and if we scroll down here, we can find a near mint verified for almost $9. So I don't entirely know if this is seeing any play. Even by the end of the page, we're looking at $20, which is absurd for a card like this, but a very interesting card nonetheless. And again, this is just the era of hat format, and that's why I'm kind of including this, even though, again, it doesn't really see any play or anything like that as far as I've ever seen. Maybe there's, again, a little bit of testing with the different fire piles. This one says you contribute this card by tributing 1 tribute summon monster. When this card's tribute summoned, look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from their hand. Then if it was a monster card, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original level times 200. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a fire monster, add this additional effect, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent after that. So just kind of a burn card. Maybe this is being used as a time card for modern monarchs. I'm not entirely sure, but I just wanted to kind of point that out as well. The last couple cards I want to leave you guys with are the QCR Dragon Rulers that had all for a while been close to, the $8 to $15 range for the most part, and now we actually see that all of them are down in price. So anyone who wants to have just one of each Dragon Ruler for your Hieratic Ruler, your Mythic Ruler, or just any other ruler deck, even some of the decks like Mermail that might just slot 1 random title into it, or a bunch of other decks that will play like 1 Redox or 1 Blaster or 1 Tempest or anything like that, these are really low in price. I remember at Nationals I was picking up Redoxes for, I want to say, close to like $7 to $8, and now we can see that you can get them for almost half of that at about $4, and there are plenty available at that price. By the end of the page, they're not even $6, so even by the end of the page, there are a lot cheaper than even what I was picking them up at, and then that's for all of them, honestly. If we look, if we go to the Tempest QCRs, we're seeing under $4, and there is, again, this person has 4, this person has 3, 2, 1, 2, like people have these available and they look really nice. Again, all the Dragon Rulers are simply at 1 in hat format, so now seems like a pretty solid time. A lot of listings too, I'm guessing, because now people with the meta shifting and stuff, people have kind of not wanted to mess with this, or the people who like to play Dragon Ruler format have already picked up their play sets of these, or just there could be a million different reasons, but all of them are very cheap. Even looking at Blaster, like look at that graph, just completely dropping. This shows it was at 12. I know for a while it was a bit more, but here again, under $4 for a QCR Blaster and plenty available. We see 88 different listings. By the end of the page, they're like $5. So even at that rate, they are very cheap. And then probably what I would say is going to be the most expensive would be Title. And even then we see Title dropping. This was a $20 card at one point, not too long ago, honestly. And here we see they're all the way down to $6. By the end of the page, they're only $7. So these are are very cheap. Again, if you just want a nice looking QCR set of just like one of each of these for your hat format deck, now seems like a pretty cool time to pick these up. I know I always need more because I have so many hat format decks, and so this is something that I know personally I'm going to be looking for more. And so yeah, no, it's just wanted to point that out. And yeah, guys, that is going to be it for this hat format market watch. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys learned something different about the meta and the format right now in terms of pricings and stuff like that, or just anything in general. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind, go and drop a like on it, comment any questions or videos you want to see in the future, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out, share this video with your friends, and anyways guys, I will see you in the next video.